Okay. Hello, everyone. We're back on Tier Maker, and today we're doing the DC Comics live action movies. Now, before I get started on this, I just want to remind you all that this is my opinion. Therefore, it is the only opinion. Now, with that being said, there's maybe one or two movies on this list that I haven't seen. However, I have seen most of the movies on this list. I grew up watching a lot of the movies on this list. I am a DC over Marvel guy. However, they're both pretty terrible these days. And most of you aren't going to agree with my opinions here. That's okay. Sound off in the comments below. I love reading them. So, that's that. The way I'm going to do this is S is an incredible movie. A is a good movie. B and C are, like B is pretty good, but maybe just watch it the one time and see what you think. C is meh, like if it's on in the background or at a mate's house, you'll just sort of watch it. Maybe when you got people over and you some food and distractions going on. D, E, and F. I mean, F is just it's a terrible movie. F is unwatchable. Walked out of the cinema. Just not watchable these days. D and E, that like it's one of those sort of like maybe watch it for the cringe or just I don't know what they were thinking. But F is completely unwatchable, pile of garbage. Burn it to the ground, throw it away. Don't waste your time and money. And because of that, we're starting off with the Suicide Squad, one of the worst movies I have ever seen. When I was watching this throughout the entire film, I was just thinking, please let it end. I do not want to watch this crap anymore. To the point where the people in the room with me were sharing my opinion on that. None of us could understand why we were still watching this film. It is terrible. The characters are annoying. They're boring. No one has charisma. The story is absolutely terrible. What's going on with Halle in this movie? Why is Halle, once again, the poster girl for the DC live action universe, but why is her storyline about her falling in love with some dictator and then killing him? Like, I don't understand. Like, it had no effect on the movie whatsoever. It's just like, oh, we got to throw Halle in here because Halle. You know, and then, like, the entire like there's a fight scene, like a combat scene where they're like infiltrating a camp and they're supposed to be stealthy and like they're not stealthy at all, and it's not even part of the joke. It's just they're not stealthy, but the director's like, now they're being stealthy, and like you could like, how did this person not see them and stuff. It's terribly laid out, terribly choreographed. The humor's not funny. It's a boring movie. Don't bother with it. It's the worst movie in the DC live action universe. Of every movie here, the Suicide Squad is the worst one. Okay, moving on. We've got Batman, Jack Nicholson, Michael Keaton. Keaton. I grew up watching this. I had toys of this Batman. I can't even count the amount of times I've seen it. For a lot of people, this is the definitive Batman. For me, this movie gets a B. It's good. It doesn't hold up to time, though, and that's the problem. Had I been doing this as a 10-year-old, this would be an S tier. It introduced me to Batman. However, I'm not a 10-year-old. It's the year 2021, and there's so much in this movie to love and so much in this movie to cringe at. And it just, the watching experience for me isn't as enjoyable as it used to be. That being said, it's still a very good movie. It's just not, actually no, it's an A. It's an A. It's just not S tier. I can rewatch it. I can enjoy it for what it is. But just like things like the bat costume, not being able to move the head, dialogue, product of its time stuff that hasn't aged well. So for that reason, Batman with Michael Keaton is an A. Now we move on to Batman Returns. I like Batman Returns more than Batman. This is an A tier movie. I love Penguin in this. I love Catwoman in this. The costume's better. It's a bit more dark and a bit more edgy. It's definitely like if both of these are on my shelf, I'm picking Batman Returns out of these two. They are very similar, but I don't know. It's more fantastical. It's got a much better balance. Um, yeah, it's the better movie of the two. And I mean, Jack Nicholson's Joker is just it's. You guys are gonna hate me for this, but it doesn't stand out. You know, it plays too hard on the like '60s gangster motive, and I get why, but just doesn't age as well for me. I much prefer Penguin and Catwoman in this, and I like the dynamic of those characters. Moving on, we have we have Batman Forever. Um, this is the movie that introduced to us Jim Carrey as the Riddler, which I actually really enjoyed. As a kid, like you got to understand, in the '90s, like Jim Carrey, there was Jim Carrey fever going on. He was Ace Ventura. He was oh gosh, I'm forgetting Jim Carrey movies. Cable Guy, Dumb and Dumber. Like it was Jim Carrey's like time to shine, despite what he became today. We got introduced to Two-Face. It's just yeah. Unfortunately, we got one of the reasons why Robin, like probably in my opinion, one of the movies that actually ruined Robin as a character up until like Chuck Dixon was able to repair that. Yeah, so this is a fun, wacky movie. It's in the A range as well. It's a fun movie. It's not as good as Batman Returns for me, but it is better than Batman. However, it's just a bit hammy, but it has that really campy fun to it. So definitely a good watch. I can't say that about this next one. Batman and Robin. This was everywhere as a kid. There were toys for it. I remember I had the little Mr. Freeze. I actually thought the costumes looked really cool. Like as a like a prepubescent kid, you're not looking at the nipples on the suits. We got Batgirl, we got Poison Ivy. I thought it was so cool having all these villains in this movie. Arnold Schwarzenegger, obviously, with all the cringy lines, etc. Does this line up with the rest of the '90s live-action Batmans? No, it's a C. It's fun. You definitely should watch it. But it's so bad. It's so bad, it's good. Ice to meet you. Yeah, it's just one of those things. And now we've got Steel. Now I've only seen this once, and it was like 25 plus years ago. It was a long time ago. I don't remember it being good when I first saw it, but I can't really comment on it much because I just don't remember that much about it, and I didn't rewatch it for this video. So this is going in E. It is nowhere near as bad as The Suicide Squad from memory, but it's not great from memory either. It was so just forgettable. It didn't imprint in my child brain. Yeah, so I can't really talk much about it. Maybe I'll rewatch it and it could end up here. I don't know. I genuinely don't know, so I'm going to pop it down the bottom. But it can't be as bad as The Suicide Squad. That is the worst superhero / supervillain movie I've ever seen. Carrying on. We have the Halle Berry Catwoman from the thousands. I don't hate this. A lot of people hate this film. I think the costume's silly. It is silly. There's a lot, like they really hammed up the cat in Catwoman on this one. But it's not a terrible movie. It's definitely it's kind of like a Fast and Furious, like a modern Fast and Furious film where it's like, it doesn't do anything positive or negative. It's just there. And for that, it's going in C, get it? Haha. I'm going to put it in C for now, and we'll see how I feel later. What do we have next? Oh, Constantine with Keanu Reeves. So here's my problem with this is Constantine with Keanu Reeves is not a bad movie. It's a bad Constantine movie, in my opinion. And that's the tricky part. Where would I put it? I love Keanu. It's better than these. It's not as good as these, so I'm going to put it in B for now, and we'll get back to it. It was interesting seeing Constantine. Obviously, this is just after The Matrix, and Keanu was hype. He still is hype, but he had, like, waves of hype. but it's a bit of an odd movie, and I don't think it's like a great Constantine movie. Like if you didn't know Constantine at all, and I gave you a Constantine comic, and you said, "Oh, that was cool," and then I gave you this movie and said, "Yeah, they made this movie," you wouldn't really put the two together. Um, yeah, so we'll see, but it is better than Catwoman and Batman and Robin, that's for sure. All right, Batman Begins. A lot of you are probably thinking, it's Batman Begins. You can't hate Batman Begins. Well, guess what? I don't. It's not great though. Um, Here we go. It's good. It's definitely the standout of the Nolan Batmans. Um, I think each one, we'll get to them. Um, it did some really interesting things. I liked the Batsuit. I liked the fact that Batman in this was a bit more intimidating, and we got to see more of his backstory and the training and the build up to Batman. I also like the fact that they went with Scarecrow as a villain. That was great. We got introduced to an awesome Batmobile. The score was good. The cinematography was great. Batman Begins is an A tier movie. This is a solid movie, and it's better than the 80s ones. Um, yeah, yeah, I stand by that. That's a great movie. The thing with these is, like, yeah, your 90s Batmans and your Batman Begins are two completely different movies. So if you like the ultra gritty, the realistic take on superheroes, you've got Batman Begins. If you like the zany, more cartoony ones, you've got that trilogy to watch and Batman and Robin. So yeah, I stand by that. Two very different movies. They can't really categorize next to each other. It's kind of like, passing the baton for very different reasons. So what do we have next? Oh, Superman Returns, Brandon Routh. This movie, I remember watching this movie and I thought the costume looked terrible. It's too much like the old school costumes. And the problem with that is we've already had textured costumes and better looking costumes around. Brandon Routh doesn't look like Clark Kent to me. He was really skinny in this movie as well, and the red shorts just didn't look good. So yeah, as a kid, I wasn't a kid when this came out, but it's something irked me with just Brandon Routh in this, and it's weird because I thought he was good in the Arrowverse up to a point, up until a point, and I've seen him in other things, and he was good. Like obviously I've seen him in Chuck, and I've seen him in Scott Pilgrim, and a few other things, and he's not a bad actor. But in Superman Returns, he did the best of what he had to work with. I don't like lifting a Kryptonite Island. Like it's so no. I'm sorry. It's D tier. I can't pretend. It's a D tier movie. The Dark Knight. S tier, right? S tier. Yeah, everyone, we're in agreement. We don't have to talk about this. No, sorry. It's a D. I hate this movie. It's so boring. It's it's a terrible movie in the sense that Batman is annoying in this movie. The Joker isn't the Joker, it's the Riddler wearing the Joker's costume, and it's not a good Riddler either. It's way too long, and people seem to overhype it and overanalyze it too, which really just leaves a bad taste in your mouth. It created some of the most cringy lines that, I've heard, in my opinion. I just don't think it's that creative. I don't think Heath Ledger was a good Joker. Because he barely played the Joker. He played Riddler with green hair. It's just, I don't know. For me, not a fan. We can talk about this forever, but I'm just going to leave it in D. I do not like The Dark Knight. Yeah, that's me. Superman and the Mole Men. Why is this in here? I mean, obviously it's a live action DC movie, but whew, I don't. How do you categorize Superman and the Mole Men next to all of this? That's hard. This is a like. This is a much must-watch product of its time movie. It's very bizarre. So I'm going to sit it in the middle at C. I can't, in good faith, call it good or bad. It is what it is, and it exists for a reason. And you should watch it if you just want to have a fun time and a blast from the past sort of moment. That's my opinion there. Definitely worth a watch. I just, it's so difficult when it's such a bizarre and classic. So C, it's just going to sit in the middle. Top of the middle, but middle. Watchmen, very long, very interesting movie. The introduction of Zack Snyder into the superhero realm. Believe this is just after 300. It's a really solid, good movie. It asks a lot of questions. I'm not the biggest like Watchmen comic book fan, but this movie is solid. It's really interesting. The visual design's great. Everything about it is good. This is an A tier movie, and it is definitely up there with Batman Begins. Very solid. Definitely worth a watch. You won't get some time. Have some time. I believe what is it, like 3.5 hours or something. So take your time with it. And you got to be in a mood. And personally, I wouldn't watch it again. But I'm not a Watchmen fan. But I did really enjoy what I was watching. It provoked a lot of good ideas in my head. All the acting was great. Definitely a good movie. Could be in B tier as well, but it's definitely no lower than a B. Moving on, Jonah Hex with Megan Fox. This movie. Does anyone even remember this movie? This movie is popcorn. That's what it is. It's a popcorn flick. It's not terrible by any mean. It's not great. Would I have rathered a different Jonah Hex film? Yes. Hands down, yes. I'm going to put it in D tier, right next to Brandon Routh. It's so forgettable, and it didn't really do anything to stand out from the crowd. I think the director was just like, we got Megan Fox in this coming off of Transformers, and kids are gonna get all excited when they see her on the screen. So I think that's what they tried to do with this one, and that failed, unfortunately. I should probably rewatch it and have a better opinion of it, but it's so forgettable. That's where I stand on that. All right. Green Lantern. This movie's... Are you ready? Yeah. Up. Shh. My tier list. This movie's good. This is a solid, fun movie. Ryan Reynolds is great. The supporting cast is fun. I remember watching this years after it came out. I hadn't seen it at launch, and everyone was like, "Oh, it's so bad," like comparing it to Iron Man and stuff like that. So I eventually watched it, and I believe I watched it for the first time after I'd already seen Man of Steel, and I'd seen a bunch of the Marvel stuff, and I was like, you know what? This is better than like Iron Man 2. Like, everyone's complaining about it and saying it's one of the worst movies ever. It's better than Iron Man 2 and 3. It's better than Avengers. This movie's good. It's right at the top of B. It's got some great moments, great characters. It excites the mind visually. It's a great concept, and I wish this had got a sequel that they could have truly fleshed out more and done some more interesting things with Hal Jordan. And I think like if this has got a sequel, the sequel would be an A-tier movie, because you can grow and learn from these things. I don't think it's as bad as anyone else thinks it is. And I might be in a minority there, but that's how you know it's the right opinion. Moving on. The Dark Knight Rises. This is just as bad as The Dark Knight. I don't know how we went from Begins and it just catapulted so bad. Some of the worst action scenes I've ever seen in a movie. Like, you can clearly see like fists not connecting. It's so cringy. And how do you turn Bane from like a luchador, like a luchador wrestler sort of background, into this weird talking through a cup thing? More people like this movie's popular because of the jokes it spawned from, like, you're a big man, and like, they didn't know I put on the mask. Like, everyone does Bane impressions. It's not because he was a great villain. It's because he was cringy and funny. And this movie was trying to be everything but cringy and funny. The twist with Talia al Ghul, saw it coming from a mile away. This movie is, I fall asleep when this movie's on these days. It's so boring. Nothing, like, interesting happens in it. It's just cringy and boring and not for me. I do not like it. It's just going to sit right there next to The Dark Knight. Ugh. Yuck. Oh, thank God. Man of Steel. This is the first S tier. I know a lot of people didn't like it. They don't like Snyder. They don't like, what he was trying to do. But when I saw this movie in cinemas, it made me fall in love with Superman. From like the thing with this movie, and I can talk for hours about Man of Steel. It's probably my most watched DC live action superhero, probably my most watched superhero movie. It is so good for so many reasons. And if you look at it at a surface level, I can understand the arguments of like, oh, there's so much chaotic destruction in the city. It's not what Superman is, blah 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 blah. But those people misunderstood this movie. Superman has found out he's an alien. What, 24 hours? Like it's literally like he's just found out who he is. And it's not like he grew up doing martial arts and learning how to fight and he was in the military or anything. He did odd jobs around America and the world on oil rigs and, like trucking and stuff like that. Like he wasn't being Superman his whole life. And he's conflicted because his human dad growing up his whole life has told him, humans aren't ready for who you are. You need to hide and compress who you are, no matter what happens. And he's wrestled with that his whole life. And then you have the scene with the tornado, where his dad is willing to sacrifice himself to protect his son's identity, which hits hard if you're an empathetic person and you understand the meaning behind that sentiment and how much it would have torn Clark up inside because he's so conflicted with himself from what he's been told, and he's got all these new, and he's like, I can save you, but this is what you want. Like, you want me to have a normal human life. And that carries on throughout the rest of Snyder's universe with Clark. And it's so clever and so heartfelt that you actually connect to Superman again, which you don't in the Brandon Routh one. Like, this makes Superman feel more human. And it was so clever having Zod and Fiora and the rest of them show up and the way they do it. And there's fight scenes are so good. The fight scenes are so good. And the world-ending machine, like, that's brilliant. Make Superman fight something as powerful as he is, with the ability to morph a world, not just a person, and show that strength and raw power in him, that brute power at this point in time, And yes, he's not a happy man because the world, he's torn, he's conflicted. His dad's dead, and the world's falling apart, and he doesn't know what to do. And Henry Cavill nailed this, and I'll forever put this movie in S tier. It is incredible. I have to move on from it though, because I don't want this movie to go on forever, and it's already been 20 minutes. Moving on. Batman vs Superman. I'm going to assume this is the director's cut and not the cinematic release. And guess what? I love this movie. This is an S tier as well. It's not as good as Man of Steel. And if you're talking about the cinematic cut, the cinema cut is a B. But Batman vs Superman is an S. The reason for that is quite simply put, it's so clever. And Ben Affleck as Batman, and this is so good. It's a perfect blend, right? So we have to break it down, okay? So first off, you've got Clark following Man of Steel. And guess what? He's now dealing with the repercussions of the city falling in the first one, in Man of Steel, okay? So that is very important to note. All those people, like people didn't understand the setup. And like, oh, man, no, because in the sequel he has to deal with that now, and that's what makes Superman is owning up for his actions and helping rebuild and helping the world, So you see Metropolis being rebuilt, and you see Superman trying to be Superman and trying to be more open to the world and understand who he is, and dealing with this, conflict inside, because you've got the media and people saying, oh, Superman's a bad person. He's like, am I doing this for good? Is this for bad? Is this selfish? Like, he's conflicted and he doesn't understand what to do. And on the other hand, you've got Batman, and the opening sequence seeing Bruce Wayne, like, watching the Wayne Tower crumble and him going to run into the rubble and save people is so good. The way, like, he's looking up and you can see the scene at the end of Man of Steel, and just the anger in his eyes from that, because Batman has been, saving the city all this time. That to have it, taken from him like this, like, you get the motivation there. And then like, so obviously, you've got this setup. Batman thinks this is a dangerous alien. And, and then they show you, like, this is not year one Batman. This is like year 10 Batman, where he's been doing it forever. He's lost his Robins. Nightwing's probably off, not talking to him anymore, along with, Babs, etc. Who knows? Like, we didn't really get to go into it too much. And then you get, like, this interesting new take on Lex, where it's a younger Lex. It's more of a Facebooky Lex, a Google Lex. And that's really good, because they are the villains of the world these days. And Lex just wants power. That's all he wants, is power. And he'll manipulate and do whatever he can to get this power. Kind of like big tech these days. And he's inexperienced, and he's working in his dad's footsteps, and he's not used to dealing with these things, and you can see the stress and the way it's breaking him and causing him to be irrational, and make these brash decisions, right? Then you get the Martha scene, where Batman and Superman have had this wicked fight scene. Superman potentially could die at this point, because Batman's got the kryptonite spear to his neck. And let me explain this to you. When he says Martha, this is Bruce. The walls he has mentally in his head breaking and crumbling down. Bruce thinks he knows his mum's name, which means he knows Batman is Bruce Wayne. And if he knows Batman is Bruce Wayne, he knows about the Batcave and everything Bruce has been doing. This alien knows. This alien who he doesn't know. And that scares him. And you see him panic in this scene, trying to figure this out. How does he know all this information? And it brings those walls down, right? And then you have Lois run in and say, no, it's his mother's name. You idiot. It's his mother's name. Like, stop and think for a minute. And that's when Bruce realizes, this isn't a dangerous alien in front of me. This is a human being who grew up in America and is more of a human than he is, because at least he grew up and had a childhood, whereas Bruce didn't. Bruce has been Batman his whole adult life, and his whole child life was taken away from him, where he just, became Batman. We know the backstory. So he's dealing with this, and everything he's been doing for the last gosh knows what time span this movie goes through is wrong. And that is why that scene is so incredible. And also, I've never put together that Martha Wayne and Martha Kent, like, it's the same name. I never put that together. So it is clever. And the people who sort of jumped on the jokes about it weren't clever enough, or didn't understand the backstory, or haven't read enough Batman and Superman stuff to understand the psyche of these characters. And that is why that scene is so freaking clever. It's so good. Then you have the final arc where Wonder Woman comes in, and we get to see an awesome live action Wonder Woman. Gal Gadot really nails it, and basically, like, everyone loves Wonder Woman up until recently. And she has a kick-ass theme, and you see what they're doing. And then you have that big fight with Doomsday. And yeah, look, it's not a great looking Doomsday, but it's still a decent fight. And Batman, my big issue with this is Batman is so, like, on the back foot for this fight, because there's nothing he can really do. But then you get to see the wicked scene of Superman sacrificing himself with a kryptonite spear to save the world. And that is the pivotal point of he's Superman, right? It's the over the mountain of conflict. And this is the thing going, this is like he's sacrificing himself. And then there's a look Wonder Woman gives Lois as she's passing, Clark down to Lois. And it's a look of pain and empathy, because she's been through it too with Chris Pine, right? And yes, that Wonder Woman came out after, and you don't know that, but the people who know Wonder Woman as a character, we knew that. And it's a heart-wrenching moment. So this movie is actually S tier. And like we established at the beginning, my opinion is the opinion, because this is my video. But this is an S tier movie if you watch the cinematic cut and you take your time to really put yourself in all the characters' shoes. It clearly is a movie where you have to be a hardcore, like, into the humanity and mindset, really break down these characters. And then it becomes this really, really good movie. And I think that's why a lot of people don't like it, is because they don't think at that depth, that level. Because, sometimes you just want to watch a movie. And this movie isn't for that. And I haven't even talked about the warehouse fight scene, but look that up. Oh, so good. So good. S tier. Moving on. Moving on. Suicide Squad. Is this as bad as The Suicide Squad? No. We've already established The Suicide Squad is the worst movie that DC have ever produced live action. Suicide Squad is a fun movie. I put it. It's like a Fast and Furious movie. It's not terrible. It's just fun. And for that reason, Suicide Squad gets a B. Um, it's got a fun cast of characters. Harley in this is fun. Boomerang's fun. Deadshot's fun. It's all fun characters. There's some really interesting CG where like when Enchantress is transforming and you see like the hand rotate. That is so cool. I know this isn't the movie it was meant to be, but it is still like just a solid popcorn flick. You can watch this. You can watch this more than once. You don't have to think about it. It's just a fun movie. I'm gonna move it behind Constantine, but it's a fun, solid movie with some great visual effects and great music and an interesting fight scene. That's what this is, with some interesting fight scenes. It's not what it should have been, but it's decent, and I do hope we get to see a David Ayer cut because, and we'll get to this in another ranking video, I'm sure. But even like Jared Leto's Joker in this, I actually think is a very solid Joker. Asterisk before you clack away at a keyboard. If you watch all the cut and extended scenes and the interviews and you understand what the intention was. So I won't get into it too much here, but had we seen an original cut, I think the opinion of these characters would be a bit different and the movie would be seen in a higher light. But we didn't get that cut. We haven't seen that cut, so I'm raking it for what it is. And it's a B. It's a fun popcorn flick. It's not meant to invoke thought like some of these other movies up here are, but it's fun. It's not bad. Now we got to Wonder Woman. Wonder Woman is a solid A tier movie. It's almost as good as Man of Steel, with some drawbacks. The overall premise is great. Chris Pine really steals the show in this, and you feel for this character, you know, because he's human and you relate to him, and he's trying to do the right thing, and he's trying to teach, you know, Wonder Woman Diana about humans and that humans aren't all bad. And at the same time, you know, like the chemistry between these two characters is great. There's a great bounce like back and forth between them. And the conflict between like Diana, who's been taught all this stuff and it lives in a paradise, seeing the world at its absolute worst, is very, very interesting. Obviously, you get the famous No Man's Land scene. It's in all the trailers. It's in this picture right here. So the No Man's Land scene is what it is. There's some great moments. The fight scenes are all fun. They're not really, you know, they're fun. I also liked the side cast of characters. I can't remember their names right now. I should probably research more before I do these videos. But like, you know, the sniper with the PTSD and all that, really showing like the downside of humanity and the issues that spawn from all this. And from Diana's eyes, like how much she empathizes and sees that in these people, but sees the hope and the fact that despite all this, they're still willing to cause together and try and fix these problems. It's a great movie. And when at the end when Chris Pine in the plane, like, oh, you can shed a tear for that. That's solid. The problem with this movie is it has a really bad guy. The final conflict scene between Wonder Woman and Ares is so plain. It's just not interesting to me anyway. Like, it's just like, oh great, we've got a big red glowing guy and shooting glowing stuff, and it's just like, oh, like that needed to be a bit more creative for this to be an S tier, but it is an A tier up until the final arc, and the thing that redeems the final arc is Chris Pine. Definitely worth a watch. I do love Wonder Woman. It is better. It deserves its place in A. Solid superhero movie. And I think the first time in this list we've seen a female lead done well. So yeah, solid. Really liked it. Now we have Justice League. Now, this is not Zack Snyder's Justice League. This is Joss Whedon's Justice League. And this is a D tier movie. Smack in the banger D tier. Obviously, there's some drama with this one. You all know the story. If you don't, look it up. Zack Snyder had a family tragedy. I don't want to get into it. And he stepped away from the movie. And DC were like, great, let's bring in the guy that did the Avengers movie to, you know, really zhuzh up our universe. And he zhuzhed it all right. This movie is awful. Hindsight, is just, yep, in hindsight, like in retrospect, having seen both versions, this movie's awful. When I first saw this, I thought it was like a C tier movie, and I didn't hate it, and I thought Steppenwolf was great, and I thought like there's a key scene I actually wish was in the Snyder cut, and that's the scene where Wonder Woman's talking to Bruce. That scene should have been in both cuts of the movie. I think even Zack Snyder would have thought that was a good scene to have. But then there's so many awful scenes, and like the Russian family, and like you just know I can't. It's so bad, so bad. I can't believe I defended this movie at one point, saying, "No, it's not too bad. It's like a Fast and Furious movie. It's just got no substance to it." There's one good scene, which is when Batman and Wonder Woman are having a discussion after they resurrect Clark, and like she's mending Batman's wound, and he's like, "Oh, he's more human than me," and he sort of explains the emotions he felt in Batman vs Superman, and that is sort of like, I wish that was in both versions of the movie. Now, moving on. We have Aquaman. Aquaman's so good. This is it's a solid A tier movie as well, and I actually like it more than Wonder Woman. It's really interesting because it's a superhero movie, but it's a it's not a science fiction-y superhero like. How do you explain it? It's like it's closer to a Lord of the Rings or James Cameron's Avatar sort of movie than it is an Indiana Jones, and it is like a superhero, traditional like superhero fight the bad guy movie. This is a treasure hunting, globe-trotting, universe spanning movie where Aquaman's, going through this Arthurian style quest. Obviously he's King Arthur. Um, and it's so fun, and it's so visually appealing, and the fight scenes are great, and Jason Momoa steals the show, and he's so just charismatic, and he's such a good Wonder Woman. He's such a good Aquaman. Nicole Kidman at the beginning was kick-ass. Like, this movie doesn't have any bad moments in it. I wish, like, the scene where he rekindles with his mum on the dinosaur island was a little longer, because I was like, ooh, this is interesting. Like, but they didn't really touch on it too much. They sort of just glanced over it. But such a fun movie. And if you don't like superhero movies because of the whole city and villain and like the traditional sort of build up in them, maybe give Aquaman a go, because it's more akin to a fantasy epic like a Lord of the Rings than it is. Like, it's like if Lord of the Rings met Indiana Jones, you get Aquaman. It's really hard to sort of categorize for that, and it's just visually appealing and so fun. Like, that rooftop fight scene really leaves you at the edge of your seat. I solidly like this movie. It's a shame about Amber Heard, but hey, as a movie, this is actually really good. Really, really good. I thoroughly enjoy this movie. It's so good. All right, now we have Batman. This is from the 60s Batman. I'm not going to do what I did with Superman and the Mole Man. It is a product of its time, but it is so fun. Like, it is so fun and so just like upbeat and so just rooted in our culture that it deserves a place up the top of B. You have to watch this movie at least once and decide whether it's for you or not. Obviously, it's a product of its time, and there's a lot of people out there older than me who love this, and it's so nostalgic. But it is a product of its time, and you do need to go into it with that mindset and understand it's just meant to be silly fun. It's almost like a parody. Like, from a modern viewpoint, if you have only seen Batman from like Batman Begins onwards, this will be such a culture shock to you. It's a parody of its time. So like, you've got like the Batman Returns and Forever, which is like an amalgamation of this 60s Batman and the more modern Batman you see in Batman Begins. This is the blend of those two, where it's campy and zany and weird, but it's also a little bit more realistic and gritty. This is full campy and zany. This is full gritty and realism. So this is that's where this one stands. Definitely a fun movie with some key moments in it that you would have seen referenced many, many times. Really solid. Shazam! I like this movie. It's funny. Zachary Levi is great. It's heartfelt. It's a Christmas film. It's got those sort of like... when I watched Shazam in theaters, it reminded me of those 90s movies you watch growing up that try to teach you a moral lesson, and it's sort of like, what was the lesson at the end of the day, kids, and all that. And it's got a really empathetic protagonist, and it's got a decent enough fleshed out villain. The Seven Deadly Sins remind me of those like villains in 90s movies that really shouldn't have been like in a kid's film. Like, it's like, whoa, and it like scares you as a child. And then as an adult, you're like, oh man, I can't believe that scared me as a kid. But in the back of your head, you're still terrified because of your childhood trauma. All the jokes land. It's funny. It's witty. It's charming. It's so charismatic. But unfortunately, the problem with this movie is you can't rewatch it too many times without it dragging on. So it's a B tier movie. It's a solid B. It's really good. I highly suggest everyone go out and watch it if you just want to have a fun time. But after you've seen it once, it's the magic's worn off, unfortunately. But maybe the sequel will be good. Who knows? The Joker. This is unlike any other movie on this list. It is just a plagiarism of Taxi Driver. I understand that. But it ushered in a whole new generation of people to this type of movie. These thought-provoking movies that really challenge your ideas. Obviously, there was controversy around the release, but that's all stupid. That's for stupid smooth brains. We're ridge brain in here today. And this movie is incredible. It's so funny. I shouldn't say that, but if you have a dark, like if you like your dark, like black comedies, like these, the humor in this is so good. And Joaquin Phoenix nailed the role. Is this like the quintessential like Joker character movie? No, it's not. Is this a solid movie talking about the human condition and the world we live in? Yes, it is. Is it a great superhero movie? No, it's a terrible superhero movie. But it is an S tier movie. It is so good. So good. And you have to watch it. It's just not a good superhero. It's not a superhero movie, and it's not a super villain movie. It shouldn't be about that. If you if it's not even Joker, it's just about the human condition. And I love this. I really love this. Definitely 100%. This is a movie that everyone should watch. I understand if you've seen things like Taxi Driver and more art housey type films, this is nothing new. But when was the last time we got a movie like that? So definitely S tier. Birds of Prey. Could this be as bad as The Suicide Squad and get an F? No, believe it or not, it's not. This is a D tier. It's an E tier. The problem with Birds of Prey is it takes all these characters you absolutely love and it throws them in the bin. In the bin! Like, you get the worst Huntress, the worst Black Canary, the absolute worst Cassandra Cain. Like, how dare they? What an insult to everyone who's read those comic books. Disgusting. Like, how do we go? That's a whole nother video, but disgusting. Ugh. Even Halle takes a step down in this movie. It is just horrible. The costumes are bad. The acting's bad. The story's bad. The translation of characters to from comic book to film is awful. This is like the only redeeming factor about this movie is a joke about a frickin' sandwich and a hyena. The rest of this movie is awful, and you shouldn't watch it. It's disgusting. Yuck. How dare they? How dare they serve this on a plate and tell you it's edible? Disgusting. Now we move on to Wonder Woman 84. This movie, it's tough. I'm not in the rank of people who think it's one of the worst things ever made. It feels like a budget 80s movie. And it comes across as a budget 80s movie. And the villain's not really realized too bad. And if you think about it too much, like you would with Man of Steel and Batman vs Superman and Wonder Woman, it would I could definitely understand like why you would think it's bad, because the tone is so different. If you come into it thinking more along the lines of like Shazam and those sort of 80s coming of age like heartfelt stories where you don't need it, like there's not a lot of depth to them, it's actually really solid. The relationship between Chris Pine and Diana, I felt it. I felt bad for her. I could understand the emotion of wanting the man you love to be back in your life. I'd make the same thing. I'd do the same thing if it was my wife. I'd make that selfish decision. And then coming to the realization that this was the wrong call and having to give up I feel like they could have handled that a little bit better, but I still really felt for Wonder Woman in this movie. I'm a sucker for 80s aesthetic as well, so that, really doesn't help. So in that regard, Wonder Woman 84 is a B tier movie. It's not terrible, it's just not great. It's good. Watch it one time and just enjoy it for what it is. You get a little bit more Wonder Woman, and then just don't watch it again. Actually, no, it's a C tier. Sorry, it's C. Moving on, Zack Snyder's Justice League. This is the cherry on top, just to wrap up Man of Steel and Batman vs Superman. And as you already know, I love those movies. And what we get with Zack Snyder's Justice League is the finalization of that. Now, there are some issues with this movie. It's very long. That's not an issue. I actually like the length. However, my issue with this one is there's so much stuff shoehorned in, and it's hard because it detracts from the purity of the movie. But at the same time, it's fan service, and the reason we're getting that fan service is because we know we won't get another one of these. So it's sort of just giving you all those little hints and stuff of like, hey, this is what could have been. And some of those are kind of weird, like the Martian Manhunter one. And some of them are really good, like the Apocalypse, future with all the cameos is really fun. So it's good that we got them, but at the same time, it mars, like, in 50 years or 30 years, if someone, or 20 years, if someone were to watch this and they don't know the backstory behind all that, like a kid, think your average 0-year-old or 1-year-old now will be 21 when that comes out, and they go, oh, I'm going to watch that old Justice League movie. As kids aren't going to know the backstory and why those events are in there, and it's going to detract from the overall movie. Does that affect my score? No, because when I watched it, I knew all those things, and I thoroughly enjoyed the movie, and this is also an S tier. This little trinity here is so good. And I know they're not for everyone, and you might like this style of Batman, or you might like this style of Batman. If you like this style of Batman, that's fine. But if you like this style of Batman, you've got problems, and you need to reevaluate what Batman is to you. But these ones, and these ones, and these ones are all perfectly fine. So that's where I sit with Zack Snyder's Justice League. It's just the whipped cream and the cherry on top of the cake, and it goes down so well, and it's so good. I wish that one scene that Whedon did here with Wonder Woman talking to Batman was put into this movie here, and if they did that, it would only make it that much better. And that's that. I'm not gonna go and rant about Zack Snyder's Justice League. Everyone knows it's the superior movie. It's so good. All right, Superman the movie. I love this movie. I watched this a lot as a kid. It was fun. Along with Lois and Clark, everyone loves Superman. This here is a solid A. It really is. It's just so fun and heartfelt, and just like the values that Superman instills and the smile it puts on your face as a kid when you see Superman. You're like, yeah, Superman. So this is a solid A. It's so nostalgic as well. Superman the movie's really good. Superman 2. So this is where things for me start to drop off, and it starts to get a little silly. This is a solid B movie. It's nowhere near as good as the first Superman movie, and it's not as good as the stuff we have these days with Superman. It does give you that charm and charisma, and Christopher Reeves is so good and will forever be Superman. But I prefer this take on, because I'm a glum human. I prefer the darker, grittier, more depressing take. It resonates with me more. So Superman 2 resonates with the child in me. Man of Steel resonates with the adult in me. And that is my justification there. And if you don't like it, comment down below. Swamp Thing. Swamp Thing is the definition of a B-grade movie. It is so fun and cheesy and corny, and it's everything you think it would be. And you should watch it. It's very good for that reason. And I like this movie. I'm going to give it a B. It's a classic, and it's a classic for a reason. It's a good movie. Superman 3. So this is where things start to just get glum and stupid, and just too campy. This is going in C tier along with Wonder Woman 84. If Wonder Woman 84 is a C, Superman 3 is a C. These are like, yeah, there's just so many, there's just weird inconsistencies and just, it's trying to do so much and it's just lacking what Superman 1 and 2 had. Each Superman movie gets consistently worse, unfortunately. And we have Supergirl. Supergirl is such a weird movie. It's so bizarre. Um, it's not as good as the Superman movies, but it is actually pretty decent, especially considering it's a product of its time. It's not as bad as these, but it's not as good as B. It has to be a C tier movie. It's probably just as bad as Batman and Robin in that regard. Like it's fun, but it's so bad it's good sort of thing. It's gonna go in C tier. But I do like Supergirl the movie. I've seen it a couple of times and it's good. All right, Superman 4. Where do I put Superman 4? It's the one I've watched the least. So it's the one I have the hardest time sort of remembering all the details with it. So I'm going to put it next to Supergirl. It's going to go straight in C tier in the middle. I don't have fond memories of it. They're nowhere near as fond as my memories of Superman 1 and 2. Um, so yeah, it's just going to sit in the middle. Um, it is what it is, I guess. And finally, we have the return of Swamp Thing. This movie is cringy. It's silly. It's nowhere near as like charming as the first Swamp Thing movie. And I'm gonna give it a D. Still, for what it is, it's I I would rather watch the return of Swamp Thing and have some giggles and chuckles than sit through the Dark Knight Rises or the Dark Knight again. Honest, that is my opinion. Um, and that marks the end of the definitive, the only DC live action movie tier list you need to see. My opinion is final. And I can't wait to see all your hate comments about my awful opinions in the comments down below. Because this is my genuine thoughts on these movies. And I know so many of you are going to think I'm insane for having them. But this is where I sit. Let me know what you think down below. And thank you for watching this monstrosity of a video that went way, way too long. But this is a DC live action universe as I see it. Okay, so I just realized there's a community rank feature on this website. And I'm curious to see what the community think and just how wrong they are about these movies. But I'm also kind of scared to click it because it's going to be revolting, isn't it? Oh no. Ew. How? How can someone legitimately tell me that Green Lantern is worse than Birds of Prey and The Suicide Squad? The Suicide Squad is a horrible movie. It should be like a test. Like if you enjoy The Suicide Squad, they just like it's like sorry, off you go. You're not qualified to enjoy things. Disgusting. This is why you should listen to me and not the community. Because if you listen to the community, you would get movies like The Dark Knight and The Suicide Squad all the time. And fun movies like Superman the movie and Batman